Everybody's going to know all about
Are you looking on the studio or the public facing?
Studio, and we are live. We're good.
We're good?
Yep.
Okay, we are now reconvening the special GIC meeting for training and education purposes. We're here at the back of City Hall. We're going to, of course, hear from the councillor who represents this ward that we're in now, which is Ward 2. And so I invite Councillor Kretsch to come and talk about what he wants us to know about Ward 2, and then we'll follow up with Councillor Maureen Wilson.
The main goal for this is for me not to fall down. I'm super clumsy. Glad to start the tour off. Didn't know I would be doing it, but hey, welcome to this tour. Hope everyone's excited. We are in Ward 2. And Ward 2 is where the heart of the city is, proverbially, where most of the city's institutions are. And as we leave this parking lot, one of the things that strikes me about Ward 2 that I think is really important to talk about, besides I think the things we already all know, the entertainment district, is traffic. You can see the bus is heading out now, backing up toward, behind us, Bay Street. Bay Street forms a kind of grid of one-way streets downtown that really just to determine how traffic moves, where it moves, how pedestrians move, and how they get around. And you can see if you look out the window here, this huge slip lane area here that's designed, frankly, so that vehicles can easily and quickly get in and out of this parking lot. You can also see here along this building where there's semi-protected or protected bike lane, and where there's a large green strip in between this version of the bike lane and that version of the bike lane. And I want to mention this because there's all kinds of interesting pressures that exist here for pedestrians and cyclists. Physically speaking, there's a hill that way, there's a hill right there, and this street slopes down here and slopes down here. Cyclists are meant to come down Bay Street and down Jackson Street here, and cars are meant to turn here. As you can tell, the visibility is pretty low, and the momentum from traffic coming down the street here is quite high, right? The idea when you're coming down Bay Street, and it feels like it when you drive on Bay Street, is to speed, right? Speed toward this light that's here. For folks who are taking bikes, the same thing happens. They have less of an ability to use brakes than cars do, right? So, yeah, I better sit or I'm gonna fall. So, so this creates a hazard, this whole area creates a hazard. Downtown's littered with these things, right? The one-way streets that are here, and we're going this way now, and so we may not get all the way to Cannon, but Cannon Street's similar, right? Again, an area where there's a lot of high-speed traffic, where a lot of kids cross the street to go to school, and where a crossing guard, frankly, puts their life in their hands every day of the week. And so I know it sounds like possibly not a very uplifting tone, but I want to give you the reality of what it's like to walk downtown. I'll tell you a brief story, and then I'll be quiet, because we're going to be going to the next person soon. But this intersection here is a great example, right at the corner, of what the experience is like being down here as a pedestrian. When COVID first picked up, there was silence downtown. It was really, really noticeable how quiet it was here. I hadn't seen, I would say, a lot of the infrastructure down here. I had noticed some of the light poles or some of the advertising the city does. I had looked at the sidewalks carefully, because every time I leave my house or walk my dog in this area, which I do every day, I'm worried about safety. I'm paying attention to other pedestrians, to cyclists, to drivers, right, in cars, making sure I don't get hit. And so I don't have a chance to appreciate or look around at what's going on downtown in my community. So I want to really let you know that experience, what the experience is like being down here. Also say, lots of development happening right now. And every which way you look from this bus, you will see a crane. Every which way, right? So there's a lot of density coming downtown. How we grow matters. And so I'll leave it on that point of how we manage the growth here has an impact directly on the lived experiences of the people who live here. These aren't just places where we have institutions. They aren't just places that are fun. These are neighborhoods, and everyone nestled in amongst the density, nestled in amongst these buildings, lives here. And so as we're going through Ward 2 at the end again, I want you to think about that and look around for the nestled places where you see people living and think about what their experiences are like. Thanks.
Fantastic, Councillor French, thank you very much. We're going to be heading into Ward 1 as we pass Queen Street, and I'll pass it over to Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you. It's hard to follow that act. Ward 1, we use the Ward 1 term because it's a political term, but people, I'm sure, are the same in your wards. They don't associate themselves with a ward. They associate themselves with a neighborhood or a school or their migration. So Ward 1 has 4 neighborhoods: Kirkendall, Strathcona, Westdale, and Ainsley Wood. And like most other neighborhoods in the city, we have highways running through and serving as really barbed wire, disconnecting friends, families, children's safe passage to school. And so in the northern part of Ward 1 is the neighborhood of Strathcona, which I believe is 63% rental. It is, in my opinion, a historic neighborhood, and it includes the Scottish Rite. But many of the children who live in Strathcona, they have to traverse King Street and Main Street in order to get to school at Earl Kitchener, St. Joe's, or they have to try and find their way down King Street or down Main Street if they're going to Westdale Secondary. And that is, as a mother of 3 children, and if you speak to other parents, we don't fear abduction. We fear our children being killed or maimed by vehicular traffic. So part of the objective of my service last term was to try and find ways in which to make those connections safer and easier. We know that children in Hamilton have above average obesity rates in terms of the provincial average. And we know they're above average hypertension. And we know that education and healthcare consists of the 2 biggest expenditures province-wide. The design of cities can actually assist us in attacking, promoting good education if kids get to walk to school, and also enabling us to tackle some of our health care costs if we are preventative in our city design. This is Victoria Park, which is a terribly amazing park, and if truth be told, my favorite in the entire city. There's something about Victoria Park. It's a size where you can lose yourself, but see your neighbor, and there's lots to do. It was, as you know, the place of the historic Crystal Palace at one point. They used to make coffins in and around the area. It's constantly changing. But as a consequence of that, anytime we want to do anything in Victoria Park, we have to do archaeological work, which adds to about 1/3 of the cost of anything. So just keep that in mind. You'll see, ta-da, right beside us, look at this awesome HSR bus going down a bus lane, which is totally awesome. And I'd like to thank the leadership of our city's traffic operations and maintenance department for that brilliant addition that came as a consequence of council support to make Main and King safer for all users. Speaking of safety, King Street and Main Street are, I don't mean to be all doom and gloom, but they are corridors which hurt people. And so I'm very proud of the leadership exercise last term to rectify a wrong that created and caused the lower city to be turned into a sacrifice zone in the 1950s. We're going through an intersection of King and Dundurn, which is the highest, I think one of the highest collision places in all of Hamilton. It's just not safe. We're going to be going over the 403 bridge, which, as you know, the 403, I believe, was built in the 1950s or 60s, which effectively turned Coutts Paradise into a ditch. And there are some wrongs that are always wrong, and the rest of our lives are spent trying to make things just a little bit better. And that's going to be one of them. We're going into the historic neighborhood of Westdale. This is one of the most awesome protected bike lanes over the 403. What else can I say? Oh, in Ward 1, 22% of people who live in Ward 1 own 0 vehicles. And I believe that number goes up to, and I could be corrected, about at least 39% in Ward 3. So either by choice or circumstance, people in Wards 1, 2, and 3 are dependent on other ways of getting around. Transit, walking, and cycling. And they don't just do these things for recreation, they do these things because they want to or they have to. So protected, connected infrastructure is really important. And I would argue it's the future of our competitive advantage because young people cannot afford cars. And if they have to choose, they prefer a safe, nice place to live as opposed to a $10,000 a year car payment. And that's been a change, right? We used to think that 5 lanes of highway was a source of our competitive advantage, but it hasn't been for a long time. That's going through the heart of Westdale, and this is going around Westdale Secondary School, which used to, at one point in its history, be the biggest, largest, most populated secondary school in all the British Commonwealth. It doesn't have much of a great heating and cooling system. I have 3 kids who have seen its hallways, and I still have one in there right now, but I don't think he's in there today. I don't know what's going on there. We're driving down what's now Main Street West, and you can see the vacancy on both sides. And this is a transit-oriented corridor, and to our right will be a transit stop, LRT. That's what that demolition was about. That will be, I believe, the Longwood stop. And there will be a development across the street. Density is good. Of course, we would prefer, all of us, to have beautiful density. I think it was Chief Planner Robichaud who said density without design is a disaster. You'll see some of the condition of these homes would probably might be wanting if you were to drive down into the neighborhoods. And that's because we have a lot of absentee landlords who do not call Hamilton home. And that's one of the reasons why we moved to pilot a licensing program in the city of Hamilton. And I believe there will be a report as council directed 6 months hence. How's it going? And the objective is to ensure that we value rental properties and as an extension we value the people who live in them, but there is a base of health and safety standard. This will be a development that Lutheran Church will be going, so that'll be a 15-story development. Inglewood Recreation Center, very busy recreation center, a combination of school and city. Coming up is a demolition that is ongoing, and it'll be the site of the new master residence, which I understand is named in honor now of the Honorable Link Alexander. That is a private-public partnership in its financing with Knightstone Capital. It's an equity firm. There's a lot of instances of private-public partnerships in building student residence in the States. It's a relatively new phenomenon in Canada and Ontario specifically. So you see lots of pedestrian traffic going across multiple lanes, which can be disconcerting. So I'm going to, the student neighborhoods primarily are way back there in Ainsley Wood. Ainsley Wood, of course, is a historic reference in that there was a farm that went all the way down here. I think the Ainsley family, I'm not sure. And I'm going to hand the mic over to my colleague from Dundas, Ward 13, and they are going to take us down Coots Drive. Thank you.
Hello. Well, this is an exciting time to start because the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pass the McMaster QP 3906 picket line. So I hope we can honk and wave and say hi. I think my campaign manager, Sophie, is actually a strike captain there right now, so I hope we can all do that. But I think as we're driving down Coots Drive, something I want us to think about as we enter Ward 13, we're still kind of on the edge of Ward 1 or that boundary moment, is first how geography relates to how we see and experience our community here in Ward 13. I think we've heard about a lot of physical infrastructure in other wards, how highways act as those boundary points. In Ward 13, I think we'll see that connections to our natural environment have been more maintained than they have in the parts of the older city of Hamilton or other parts of the city of Hamilton. And as a result, I think it's really, people have culturally in community a better understanding of how, when it rains, where the water goes, because we're in the middle of a floodplain valley. We have a better understanding of how traffic can impact our neighborhoods because we have only a few roads in and out of the escarpment. So when one of those is closed, we can see the impact of congestion in a really big way, and a lot of the geography of the ward impacts that. As we're going just over here, there's an amazing trail path, multimodal path that you'll see QP 3906 folks waving flags at, and this connects the wards of Ward 1 and Ward 13 and is a highly used path for students, faculty, and other folks. This is the picket line. Teaching staff at McMaster are asking for fair compensation to live in the world that exists today. And one of the things that we're seeing right now in Ward 13's context is there's not really a place for renters to afford to move in. There's not really a place for McMaster faculty who are maybe newer into their careers to move in because the price point excludes many, many people. Many of our neighborhoods are turning over and young families are moving in, and that's a really, really exciting renewal for our community. The demographics are definitely in flux, and so it raises some important questions about, as we're a neighborhood in transition, as we're a community in transition, who can afford to be here and who can afford to be a part of that transition. We're really grounded, I think, as we're driving in by just, again, like the nature that is so prevalent in our ward, and we're so lucky. We have Spencer Creek on that side of the car, and then we have Coots Paradise over here. And this is the point, whether it's Spencer Creek, Lancaster Creek, Forest Creek, they all flow here and meet up before heading out to Chitto Creek and Coots Paradise. So we'll pass a lot of waterways as we drive down Concession 5 later. And I think it's important to understand they all end up right here. As we're driving by, they all end up over this highway that we just drove over. And as a result, this is an incredible turtle nesting habitat for some endangered species that you can't find in other places, or that are limited to just 2 to 3 spots left in Hamilton. As we drive over our infrastructure, again, that connection point between our natural environment and our maybe physical environment or our human environment is top of mind. This is an important corridor that connects Ward 13 to Ward 1, that it connects folks to McMaster, but we're also having a clear and negative impact on the wildlife and endangered species, and a point that's potentially irreparable. And so I think with that, another thing I want to highlight about Ward 13 is that neighbors step up together. There's an incredibly high rate of volunteerism in our ward, and people are coming together to make our community better every day. And I want to, shout out the Dundas Turtle Watch, which is a group of citizens coming together to exactly intervene in these situations where there's a conflict between our built environment and our natural environment. People are trying to find the solutions, are trying to ensure that we can take care of turtle nesting habitat and they can cross safely. So I think it's really exciting to constantly see that advocacy. I want to point out, though, as we drive by, that you haven't seen a grocery store in Ward 13 yet, and there's only one. So you won't. There could have been one right here, but because of a restricted covenant with Canadian Tire, A grocery store was not allowed to go in when the Canadian Tire was brought out. We cannot get another grocery store in town. So how does, again, it's this question of how does development and how does this investment that we're making in our community benefit the folks in our community? Who are we building communities for? Are our communities just an opportunity to make some money, or are we trying to build an investment for the people in the place that live here? And I think these are the important questions. Because in a community that could be so walkable and is so walkable, just right ahead we can see our downtown, and you'll really notice an income shift as we drive from the lower end of the city up in terms of the facades of the buildings, in terms of the heritage features. And again, it's this constant who gets to participate in this great walkable community that we see is a tension really as we're a community in transition. We have a lot of seniors, especially living near our downtown in some of these apartment buildings. We'll see the Creekside condos over there. There's a lot of buildings that are intentional seniors community or have become seniors communities as cultural kind of shifts have occurred. And so folks need safe streets to walk to get their groceries, but also proximity to the services that they need. As we look at these storefronts, again, there's more and more vacant buildings in our downtown right now because largely in speaking to business owners, the cost of rent is COVID-19 pandemic have had huge impacts on our ability to put retail spaces up in many places. And so if there's not a community grocer, if you can't get those things that you need, you're having to drive to a Walmart Supercenter or a Costco, or you're leaving the ward to go to a different ward or a different community to fulfill those services affordably and in a way that you can do that. So we're driving right now through downtown Dundas, and I think this is really like the gem. When people think of Dundas, this is what they're thinking of, I think, a lot of the time. It's a really vibrant space, and how can we make this a space where not only does our community come together, but our community also connects. We've heard a lot about how pedestrianization and safe streets can help people get from place A to B, but they also help people find place. And I think that's something that Cameron talked about a bit in Ward 2, is when you can slow down and you have a chance to come together, you also notice what are the problems, how can we come together. So there's a commitment in our platform to revitalize the public space in the downtown, to talk about how we can use this as both a meeting place for folks to come together, to share ideas, but also as the place that already is a place of commerce and a place for people to really experience the city and the small town of shops and things like that. As we're driving up here, we're going to pass both the street I live on, hello my house, but also we're driving up Sydenham Hill. And one of the things I just want to highlight here is this is again the context of the urban geography really confines what we can do, or our natural geography. We have very few arterial roads that take a lot of pressure because of things like the escarpment. Our waterways limit where we can impose a full grid. And so Sydenham, we're going to pass a school right up here. There's huge traffic considerations because both neighborhoods on either side of us have to use this road to get into the city or to get where they're going. Folks who are coming from up the escarpment who live up in Flamborough have to use this hill to get in. And we also have a school zone here. And so there's a lot of pressures on our arterial roads. On Old Ancaster Road, there's huge pedestrian safety concerns right now. That's another similarly pressured neighborhood arterial. And so we have important work to do to make sure the people can use these as the arteries they are, but also respect that these are residential neighborhoods too. People live here and they need to be able to get to school, they need to be able to walk safely, and getting those multimodal paths on our streets and ensuring they work for all the needs they do safely needs to be a big focus across our city these next 4 years. I also think, again, there's so much to talk about and we're in Ward 13 for a while, but I hope folks are noticing the heritage of some of the homes as well. This is an important conversation going on in our community. Again, it's this question about development and design and how can we honor what's here and respect the deep, rich, and long history of this community that's existed pre-Confederation, while also ensuring that as we're in a period of renewal and as development comes in, we're making space for people of all incomes, of all ethnicities, and of all backgrounds and experiences. And so some difficult challenges in our ward and across the city, but I hope folks are getting a chance to take in really the beauty and appreciate it. And I'm gonna stop talking soon because I know we're on our way to Ward 15, but I also hope folks can take a chance to look out over not just Ward 13 and the Dundas Valley, but the entirety of the lower city. It's really, really breathtaking, and I think you can see just how much the escarpment is a part of the whole city, something that here in Ward 13 we recognize every day. I'll close I mean, like, it is worth clapping. Like, I think there's breathtaking beauty in Ward 13, and I hope that more folks from across the city can come and visit and can share it. We have so many wonderful natural areas that we have to care for, and we have to take care of, because when we visit these areas, we also have an impact. When we appreciate these areas, we also have an impact, and that impact needs to be in relation to those communities and in relation to those areas, and not just, you know, for the sites or for seeing or for a commodity. And so really, really excited about all this. And I'm gonna, maybe we can take a bit of a pause, or I can pass it over to Ted, because I know we're on our way to Ward 15. Oh, sorry, I could keep going forever. We're about to pass Diamonds Farm, which is a very important local farm as well. But yeah, I'm really, really excited to pass this over.
Thank you so much. We're gonna just wait for Councilor McKeon to head to the front here. But by the way, people are welcome to stay seated when they're giving their remarks. It's whatever you feel comfortable with, and however it's best to navigate the motion of our bus. Uh-oh. You give us
The emotion of our bus, yeah. Well, we're getting there. I just want to say, by way of starting out, that as we see the currents of history all around us churning into rapids, a lot of people are concerned about change. Many see change like the caterpillar who looks up at the butterfly and says, "You'll never find me flying around in one of those crazy things." But the good news is caterpillars do become butterflies, no matter what caterpillars think. And Ward 15 reflects some of that. A lot of that. Ward 15 is famous on a per capita basis for three things. On a per capita basis, there are more Christmas tree farms in this area than anywhere else. There are more nudist camps. You keep abreast of things, right? And oh, terrible. And more golf courses. So if you ever want to come up, when I get my knee fixed and play a game of golf up here, we could do that together. It would be fun. Flamborough also is home of the Beverly Swamp, which is a very large wetlands area. A lot of talk about wetlands these days. If it weren't for the Beverly Swamp, the village of Dundas, the old village of Dundas, would be flooded every year. And that's really important, Craig, isn't it? To recognize that. When we come into, we're coming up to number 5 highway, which is runs right through the heart of Waterdown. Waterdown used to be known as the Victorian Village. Waterdown, I'll just preempt this a little bit because there's so much to say about this particular part of the world. Waterdown was one of 14 settlement areas. It was known as the police village of Waterdown. There were more policemen in Waterdown 100 years ago than there are today. And that's a bit of a growing issue. A lot of truck theft in the community and gangs out here. And so some concerns, I think, when we get around to building the new police and fire compound, that will help a lot. And I think we're going to turn right here, if I'm not mistaken. About 83% of the people in Ward 15 live in the urban core of Waterdown, and about 35% of the folk there are newcomers who've lived there less than 3 years. Of those, 61% work in the GTA, and they have little affinity to Hamilton. I'm embarrassed to say. My hope and prayer is that we can turn that around, and people there can come to love my great city as much as we all do, and I certainly do. Of the newcomers, only 19% voted in the last election, and so there's a sense of detachment there. The biggest single challenge we have, you're coming up to one of the best par 3 courses in the country here, Rock Chapel. They have a lovely little mini golf course there too. If you ever want to come up, I'll challenge you to go there. It's a growing community. We're fast approaching well, let me just go back to the population. 19%, 61% work in the GTA. I was going to say the biggest single challenge I feel as a newly elected councillor there is to build some affinity between the newcomers and the old timers in Ward 15, and ultimately buttress that to build some enhanced love of and appreciation for the complexity and the challenges and the blessings of our great city. We're coming up to the industrial park, a lot of industrial growth here. The industrial park at the corner, Quaveson's corner there, a big major intersection changes in the works. There's a plan to add 3,300 jobs in the new jobs in the industrial park, and about 3,000 housing units this side of the highway, the west side. The services basically are there already. I didn't know this until I got into doing some research, but 1 in 3 people who work in the city of Hamilton work in an industrial park. 1 in 3, that's an amazing stat. That's off to the right, the industrial park. The ward includes a number of settlement areas, the police village of Waterdown, now Waterdown. They now call it the Victorian Village of Waterdown. By the way, 19%, the 35% newcomers, 19% of whom work in the GTA. The other 65% of people been here 5 years or more still like to see Waterdown as the Victorian Village, a place they can walk to, catch a good meal at, go to a niche business, lots of small businesses here. 20 some odd years ago, I was the chair of the Waterdown BIA back when it was a volunteer job. Today there are 3 full-time people working there, so that shows the kind of growth that we've had. One of the biggest single needs we have in the community is for a new school, and as you know, educational funding is a provincial responsibility, and twice the school board has made it their number 1 or number 2 priority and has been rebuffed. So one of the commitments I've made is to work with everybody to pull all the ropes we can to get that school built. Traffic calming is a big issue here. The Waterdown bypass was planned some 25 years ago, and I remember our council, I was the mayor here for a couple of terms, the council spurned the effort to get it done then and said, no, we'll wait for Hamilton, we're going to be amalgamated, we'll wait for Hamilton to get that done. Well, it's now been 22 years and it's not done yet. I think they've discovered some indigenous artifacts along one of the properties, and that's holding it up now. Stringer is over here, great big industrial movement shaker, tri-band plazas, one on each side here. Voted that not that long ago as the ugliest 2 plazas in Hamilton. Not very well planned in my opinion, but we're working on that. You can see a lot of small businesses along here. We're going to come up to the high school, old high school, that award-winning restoration into housing, and that's something we're pretty proud of. The busiest single area in Waterdown is the Waterdown High School, Alan Greenleaf Public School, and the YMCA. Many years ago, we discerned that we needed a multi-purpose recreation center, and we didn't have the money to do it, so we partnered with the Y to build it. That's probably run its course. We now are looking at doing a feasibility study for a new multi-purpose recreation center here, primarily to provide opportunities to bring old-timers and newcomers together, to meet together, exercise together, work together, try to develop an affinity and a love for this community. You can see the sort of the ad hoc nature of the plazas here. Lots of fast food places, which is great. When you're on the bus tour, we can stop. It's the fastest growing area of our great city, and it is a community that's living somewhere between memory and hope. So I'll say a little bit more when we get into town here. During rush hour, this road is more dense and more compact than even the highway in rush hour. It's terrible, and it hurts business because nobody can stop. And when we get the bypass done, that will be a bit of a boom to the small business community. This is where the old Flamborough Town Hall used to be. Now it's the new award-winning library, which was one of the benefits of regional council and the move to consolidate communities. There were several things that have happened and would not have happened if that had not happened. So you can see the changing housing nature here as we come up to this development. This used to be years ago a wonderful smorgasbord type restaurant, the Bohemian it was called. And it was we used to go there every Sunday, but now we visit people here when we get a chance. Jane Scala, who runs the Mary Queen, the new president of the Flamborough Chamber. We're coming into the heart of Waterdown now. On the left-hand side, you'll see the major plaza. A historical footnote, it used to be one of the largest duck landing areas in all of Ontario. I don't think there'd be very many ducks landing in here now. The high school, the old high school on the right here. And many people refer to what lies east of here as Mississauga West. It is really, Andrea, you were up there, you know what it's like. When I was doing a bit of canvassing in there were three things I heard from people. One was, it's really nice to be here because the houses were 40% less expensive. Then they would add, but I don't want my kids living in our basement for the rest of their lives. So the whole housing demand, and then almost everybody said, where the hell are the parks? And those, my friends, could be in some real danger as we see some of the moves to cut parkland development charges in half. That's going to impact neighborhood parks badly. My wife and I owned and operated the original Chapters bookstore here, the award-winning Chapters bookstore here in the plaza. When the big box came, it was the only year I made any money. I sued them for $2.8 million for stealing my trademark name without my permission. And then we settled, not for $2.8 million, but we settled. I wish. Memorial Square here at the Legion. Remembrance Days are with the obligatory. Here's the coming up to Waterdown Park, Memorial Park, which, by the way, has been largely transformed. Again, largely due to access to some additional revenues, which weren't always available here when we were in the town of Flamborough. Another plaza, and Rock Haven, Rock On Haven, Rock On. Do you know Iceland has a navy? Did you know that? They have barcodes on their ship. You know why? Ships. You know why? They need to scan the navy in. If you remember nothing else today, you'll probably remember that. Right? Okay.
Village of Waterdown Water Tower.
Yeah, there are several of them now as we've developed. Down here is the high school, the YMCA, and Alan Greenleaf historically, some of us have had some deep involvement with all three of those projects. And when you know how you wave during an election? I always wave there because in an hour you could wave to 600 cars. That's how busy it was. Oh, it looks like we're gonna go down that way. So fire hall here, the old fire hall. I think the plan is to have the current volunteer firefighters continue to work out of this station and here, and then the new station will house a complement of new full-time fire and police personnel. It's not true that there's only one policeman east of the highway. There are more than one policeman, but you'll hear from people here. There's only one cop in town. Now, why aren't they tracking the guys down the snow like? You know, it's tough. This is the area here, the YMCA. It was built in partnership. We cut a deal with the developer. He donated 7 acres for the Y and the school, and Mel Hockrig and I and a number of others raised $3 million to build that Y. And it's probably the best used facility in town. You see the kind of development to the right here. It's you know, the kind of it's not quite as dense as the southeast corner of Waterdown, but it's where I never ever thought I'd say we're more dense here than in Hamilton, but I think we're getting more dense here. So traffic calming is a biggie. Lots of rural area. You've only seen about 1/10 of this part of Flamborough. If you go up Hamilton Street about 30 kilometers, you're still in town. So it's massive. And of course, every sign of a mature community is a new car wash station. Let's go in here, big development. Still lots of farmland. It's deceiving. You know, some people see, mostly development folks see Flamborough as sort of a Hudson's Bay outpost, just right to development. You've got a lot of developers knocking on farmers' doors now, multi-million-dollar checks to buy. It's happening much more quickly now than some of the changes we're seeing at another level of government. Item number 6. There's been some good traffic. You know, there's been a big fight. You know, these bundles used to have to be in squares, and there was a big argument about why they were in squares. And the simple reason was because the animals out here deserve 3 square meals a day. I don't know who's next down there, but
Who's on our route here?
We're going between
Can I-
Councillor
13,
Wilson
I guess we're going
Share
back.
the
Yeah.
3 of us, and we'll do a Flamborough
Okay,
of
that's
3.
good. That's great. That's really good.
Yeah,
Can I-
so that I'm back again.
Alex, can I do this really quickly?
Sorry, since we're at a red light, before we go on, just to let people know, if you're thirsty, there's some refreshments up top here, some water. There's also some fruit and some snacks if people are feeling a bit peckish. Okay, thanks.
Good job, Ted.
thank you.
For the next chunk, I'm hoping Ted and Craig can speak with me as we go through various parts of Flamborough, a community that all 3 of us have large chunks of in our ward. And so as Ted was speaking, we've really only hit the southern tip, or the tip of our communities. Extending westward, it goes for quite some time. Dozens of kilometers, much more than we've seen. And so it's just the density that shifts. But there's so much more farmland, Headwaters area, the Beverly Swamp, all of this important part that impacts what happens here on the other side of Highway 5. This is the downstream area. And so something to think about a lot as we go through Flamborough. 2 things I want to point out is we're going to drive kind of by the community of Greensville, another historic community, one
I
that's
used to
in...
live there.
Woo! Yeah, home of current mayor Andrew Murvath, and also, you know, a really kind of interesting rural community as it's on the edge of the escarpment and on the edge of Dundas. It's been separated from Dundas because of a highway closure for repairs for the past 3 years. And something, again, that that's led to surrounding traffic on other roads that are not necessarily maintained
2 years
for the truck traffic, that are not necessarily ready for the traffic that gets diverted. And one of the reasons why there's so much traffic as a result of that closure is in part because we're going to pass the Lafarge Quarry. And we've been talking a lot about development, and we've been talking a lot about good development, where it goes, what it looks like. But also I think something we have to keep in mind is where does the material we use to build these homes come from? So as we pass by the Lafarge Quarry ahead, we're not really going to be able to see it because it's behind these berms. Those prevent fly rock, but they also do kind of keep a public division between the site. One of the things to note is just the sheer environmental costs that a quarry has. They're very, very important. Like cement is necessary for building homes. It's also a huge polluter globally. And so as we've been talking about some of the tensions in our wards and how we have to find this middle ground or find the compromises that make sense to build the future and the communities we want, something really important to keep in mind is where's all this stone, where's all this aggregate coming from in the homes that are popping up across our ward? A lot of it's coming from right here. And so how do we restore these areas when they're at the end of their life cycle is a really, really important question. What is our relationship with our corporate neighbors? These are international finance groups largely in the aggregate sector. So how are we engaging? What is that relationship like? And how is the community nearby impacted? There's a current proposal that really impacts the folks in Greensville right now at one of these quarries is to incinerate waste as part of a low energy fuel, and so an alternative low carbon fuel. That's at the provincial level, but there's real concerns from residents about what impact that's going to have on air quality, what impact that's going to have on the local waterways, the soil, and so that's an ongoing conversation as well in our community as some of these things come up. So I will kind of pass it to Ted and Craig to add their Flamborough hits, but we are also going to pass Christie Lake area. I don't know, it's not in your area, Craig, but if you want to talk a little bit about Christie or some of the other waterways in Flamborough.
I guess, okay, we got a lot. Okay. Okay, so we're not in Ward 12 yet, but like Alex said, Flamborough is split into 3 parts for ward purposes. And Ward 12 has West Flamborough, Ward 13 would be Central Flamborough, and then East Flamborough in Ward 15. Okay, so yeah, Christie Lake is coming up on our left, part of the Hamilton Conservation Authority. How many people have been to Christie Lake here? Just a show of hands. So most people, which doesn't surprise me because it is a gem in the area. You have the lake there, man-made, and many trails in the area there on the far side of the lake. You may not know across the road there, I believe that's Middletown Road, there's another trail system, which is much quieter and more secluded, and if you haven't been there, you should check that out. What else would I say about that? Well, when we get into Ward 12, it is a large area, and I'm not going to guarantee that I can talk continuously like has been done so far, so we may get into some pauses. Well, yes, great question, Alex. Why do we need to protect our headwaters? Applause from Ted. Well, there's a lot of reasons. First of all, I'll speak to the Garner Marsh, which we will, I don't think we're going to pass it directly, but that is in Ancaster, and that is the headwaters of Ancaster Creek at Garner Road and the Highway 6 overpass. So in that particular case, the headwaters are spring-fed into the Garner Marsh, and that's what feeds down into Ancaster Creek, which then merges with other creeks and streams called Coldwater Creek, and then with Spencer Creek out to King's Paradise, which Alex spoke about earlier. So those headwaters, because they are spring-fed, they are cold water, and the reason that's important is because that water, cold water, is defined as below 20 degrees Celsius, and that supports a unique type of biodiversity and wildlife, particularly trout, coming up from King's Paradise up to the creek. And as development happens on there, the idea would be to move the wetlands, move the Garner Marsh, and create a stormwater pond. So the idea is, there's acknowledgement that wetlands help prevent flooding by absorbing water and holding it during extreme weather events, and I'm going to trust that everyone understands that concept. A stormwater pond would essentially, on paper, do the same thing. However, that water is exposed to the air, and it sits there and it warms up, and then continues flowing down into the creek. And you remember I mentioned that it's a cold water creek, so warmer water going down the creek there is not going to maintain the habitat required for certain species like trout. So what it does is it pulls a ribbon out of our ecosystem, and you have less species there. And biodiversity is important. There's actually a biodiversity action plan, which we will be talking about as council. It's going to be proposed sometime in the new year, I believe. But I mentioned a ribbon because there's a theory that was put out, I think, in the 60s by an ecologist. If you think about the ecosystem as a bunch of ribbon put together and envision a plane. So if you're flying in a plane that's made of ribbons, you can pull one ribbon out and maybe nothing happens. You know, maybe it's not a critical part of the plane's integrity. But you pull another ribbon out and another, and then at some point the plane is going to fall apart, it's going to lose integrity, and you're not going to be able to fly anymore. And of course that is catastrophic if you're 30,000 feet in the air. So take that analogy into what we're talking about into the biodiversity in our ecosystems here. You know, you lose one species, okay, maybe no one notices. You lose another, oh, that's so sad, we shouldn't have done that, oh, well, we need development. And then you keep doing that, as we have been doing for decades, and all of a sudden, that metaphorical plane that we're in is going to come apart, and the problem is, we cannot predict when that point is where things are going to fall apart. And that's why we need to do everything we can right now to preserve what we have. I mentioned the Garner Marsh. You may know I did a video about this earlier this year called Follow the Flow of Ancaster Creek, which took you on a tour from those headwaters.
It was excellent.
It sure was.
Thank you, Councilor Wilson. It takes you on a tour and talks about basically what I'm talking about and the negative impacts. So we just need people to be aware of what's happening and the impacts of the decisions we've made. Yes, we want to develop, but we need to do it as Councilor Meekin was talking about, intelligently, in the right places, with the right benefits, and to get the outcomes we need without creating bigger problems that we have to deal with down the road further.
Well, I was just saying, thanks. I'm going to pass it to Ted next, but I really appreciate it. We're still in Ward 13. Like, I hope folks noticed all the trucks. We got to see one of the quarries. Like, you can see the impact. But you also, I want to point out, we passed Morton's. We passed several other local farm stores. And what Craig was really sharing with me, or with us, what I heard was the importance of interconnectedness and understanding how we're all connected and part of one heritage system here, natural system here, and what happens in one area of our community impacts others. I think, yeah, it's really exciting to be here in Ward 13 and in Flamborough, because I think that people here also have a history of experiencing that connectedness with the lands and the waterways through industry. So whether that's through the aggregate sector and the quarries, or whether that's through local farming and agriculture, people have always been working in that intersection, and I think understand that connection. I think Councillor Wilson and Councillor McMeekin want to jump in, if I could pass it to...
I just, one thing on, Craig mentioned the headwaters. There's an analytical chemist at Redeemer University who has been working with the last 12 years. They've been testing downstream initially on the impact of coots. And Tice, the head of natural lands at RBG, was noticing some anomalies, and he suggested they start testing at the headwaters. And that was really important. They've been doing 12 years of testing. They have great amount of data, informs that what the development and what it looks like and the non-porous nature of it is actually impacting all of those referenced urban creeks that Craig mentioned, and of course ultimately Coots and our harbor. And the next demonstration is December the 6th at Redeemer College. If anyone is interested in checking out the students' work this year, hit me up and I'll give you the details. I know they'd love to see you. Thanks for this.
I'll be there.
Yeah, thanks for all those great comments. I would echo all of them, and particularly the emphasis on being so darn careful about urban boundaries and not rushing into developments that have a really detrimental impact long term. I just want to comment very briefly on the Lafarge kiln incinerator project. It is scaring a lot of people. there's a partnership that's been put in place with Lafarge to burn this material. And the company has a plant in Ingersoll, and there have been all kinds of problems down there. The stuff they burn has been putting off, as I understand it, from reported toxic fumes. And the real worry is the plant is downwind of Waterdown and parts of London, so it's a real concern. So it's a provincial process. They've had a couple of public meetings by Zoom, but nobody's allowed to speak or ask questions. Right? So we need to be really on top of that as a city to make sure that if they move ahead, they are only allowed to do so with assurances that Hamilton is carefully monitoring the fumes that may be emanating from that plant.
Well, depending on where we turn here, we're either staying in Ward 13 or we're moving to Ward 12. Wards 12, 13, and 15 are some of the largest geographic areas of Ward. So this is one of the reasons why I think you're finding us up here for so long, and just something to keep in mind, is that these are huge areas and they're so distinct. The Ward 13 community has urban, suburban, and rural communities that are all a part of it. Some of them are adjacent and connected. Some of them are distinct and maybe more connected to urban centers in Cambridge and other areas. So, I mean, we're gonna, I think, be driving back into suburban Dundas, but I'm gonna throw it to Craig, because we're on our way to Ward 12 next, if he has any kind of points you want to do, and then I might point out a thing or two as we're in town again.
Okay, we've now turned onto Highway 52, which is part of rural Ward 12. In recent years, there's been a campaign on this road called Safe on 52 to improve the level of safety of driving here. It's been very dangerous. I believe the speed limit's been reduced from 80 to 70 as part of that effort. But it is still a very highly traveled corridor, as you can see as we come on. There's a lot of traffic in this time of day. But you can see in here the farmland that we talked about, which comprises the majority of Ward 12. If you just look out the right window here and go for kilometers and kilometers and kilometers, that's all Ward 12, all the way out to the boundary with Cambridge up in this area, and as we get further down the road with Bradford. So it is, I believe, by area the largest ward, pretty close to Ward 13. Okay, up ahead. Well, actually, what I'll mention here is a lot of the settlement areas within this part of Ward 12. So we will be going through Coketown, which is the intersection of Highway 52 and Governor's Road. There's Orkney, there is Sheffield, which is out towards Cambridge, which is kind of in between Ward 12 and 13. We have Carluke, which is in the far east end, which we're not going to get to, and Jerseyville. So a lot of historical areas that do not feel necessarily Lancaster, which is of course the most populous part of Ward 12, and there's a lot of distinct feelings of being separate, having separate needs. While campaigning, I learned out in Linden that they've actually had a water advisory for the better part of a decade, which has just recently been lifted in the past year because they needed infrastructure upgrades there. Well, it's one of those things that I don't know how many people were really aware of. We're working on a word, but just to know that there's a water advisory for a decade in Hamilton. Just let that sink in for a minute. It baffled my mind. So as we continue down here on 52, on the right, you're going to see, I'm not sure exactly where we are. We're coming up to Coketown. This intersection coming up is Coketown. And just past that, you're going to see some construction on the right. I believe the roofing is on now. You're going to see the exposed framing of, it's the Loweth family farm. So they are a prominent farming family, multi-generational here. They have a dairy and 1,000 cattle, 500 which are producing milk at any given time. And what they have been working on over the last few years is something called the Summit Station Dairy and Creamery. So this is a great example of business expansion happening here, not only in Hamilton, but in the rural areas. And I gotta tell a little story about this because I think it's fascinating and I'm really looking forward to when they are hoping to open up in May. So Summit Station used to be a station stop on the railway a long time ago, and they are recreating their new business to. Anyway, okay, so we're not going to see right now this building, but they're recreating their business to look like that railway station. And the way the elevation works, you would see it on your right, so it's very prominent. And they are going to be selling bottled milk, and they're going to deliver it. So if anyone has ever lived in an area where bottled milk delivery was available, you're going to be able to do that again. And if you haven't, you will be able to experience that. So they've done the analysis on what region they can support from a sustainable point of view, because glass is heavier and there is a benefit to reusing it versus plastic, but they put the thought into it on how far can we go and still have a positive environmental footprint. And there will be a shop available, so you can go in and buy certain dairy products. And it's also notable that it's right along the rail trail. So if you've been on the Hamilton to Brantford rail trail, it crosses right there near Powerline Road and Highway 52. And so hopefully there's going to be a lot of foot and wheel traffic, cycle traffic, to be able to stop in there. And the last thing I'll point out before I hand it back to Alex here is that same location, there's a grassroots push for a roundabout. Because crossing Highway 52, you mentioned talk about Safe on 52 campaign, it's a highway. Okay? A lot of trucks come through there, and the rail trail crosses, and it's very unsafe. So there's a push to have a roundabout put in there, which would calm traffic and allow safer crossing for pedestrians and cyclists to continue on their journey. And I've used that many, many times, and I can tell you, so that's something I'm sure we'll be talking about.
Thank you, Fizz, to just move insights, because you've heard from me a lot, but we've been in Ward 13 a lot today. And so coming up on right is going to be the Dundas Valley Conservation Authority. That's a huge interconnected natural system in the Hamilton Conservation Authority largely. And it's really, really important, and I'll just pick up on that point. Not only is it an interconnected series of over 40 kilometers, 12 connecting residents for recreational and for actual commuting purposes in the case of the rail trail. It's also connected to the Coos Garden Eco Park system. And so what happens is, as we want all of the nature and the biodiversity that Craig was mentioning to travel from area A to area B, as is so important for so many things, especially as birds and other things migrate, as changes happen in temperature and the seasons, there is the potential for an interconnected system all the way up in the Halton region to the RBG area. That's called the Coos Garden Eco Park system. Our city and other investors are putting a lot of money into that system right now. That only works, and that idea only works, it can plug back into the Dundas Valley Conservation Authority as the next stop in the journey. So again, it's just this really theme about how we can learn a lot about interconnectivity as we're in Ward 13 and seeing those connections between both our ward and other parts of the city, but also our ward upstream and down. And the last when something happens, or if there's traffic safety concerns, or if we leave governors and go into the neighborhood, that can create huge safety concerns or pedestrian concerns. And so on every single kind of community on either side of government, traffic safety either at governors or in their neighborhoods because of people trying to avoid governors. And so again, it's this thought about how do we balance our arteries and pedestrian safety in our suburban communities. So that's some things to look out for as we go ahead. But I've talked a lot.
Want to plant
Snaps.
So go ahead, Shannon.
I'm just going to pass down some granola bars, water, and oranges, tangerines. If anyone wants it, pass it down and pass it back, and I can take it back to the front.
Thanks so much. And just as folks, reminding folks that there's sometimes connectivity issues here. So if we end up disconnected, we'll have to recess and then start up again. And what will be next on the tour? Dr. Craig?
We're actually heading back through Dundas down the old Ancaster Road.
Oh, we're going to go Old Ancaster
Yeah,
Road.
so we're going right back into town, and then we'll take Old Ancaster Road right down to the fairgrounds.
Yeah. We actually call it Old Dundas Road in Ancaster.
Oh.
Just change it. I know it. I know where you're coming from. Okay, so interward. So here is the entrance to the Dundas Valley Conservation Area. You're welcome, Alex. That's the main entrance there. And how many kilometers of trails did you say?
Over 40.
Over 40 kilometers of trails. I've personally been in there running, cycling. There are race events that are held in there. If you're in there at the right time, you will see horses, which the kids love.
And super quickly, if you look to your left, you'll see where Alex got Lyme disease. And so this is something to think about is as our climate changes, so do the pathogens. We're experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic. And I say that jokingly, but it is a serious matter that both West Nile has been in the city of Hamilton, down in the Dundas Valley Conservation Authority area, and then I myself contracted Lyme disease and got it treated also in the Dundas Valley Conservation Authority area. And so something to think about is how are we talking about public health and how is the public health of these spaces changing in a warming climate?
Yeah, I'll just jump off of that. I just had an interaction with a constituent the other day who contracted Lyme disease many years ago, and he's actually written a book about how birding, so the process of going out and looking for birds, watching birds, has helped him cope with Lyme disease. Not that it's an actual treatment, but just being outdoors in nature, enjoying things, taking his mind off of it. And it's something that he's able to do because he lives in our city and has access to all of this. So it just kind of puts a finer point on how privileged we are to be able to access this. And I know it's on the far side of the city, and the access to everybody through public transit is not what it needs to be. So it's something that is, for all of us, it's an asset for everybody in the city, but we don't actually have all equal access to it. So I know that's a topic that needs more discussion in the future when we talk about transit.
Speaking of transit, we've just passed Dundas Valley Secondary School, Sir William Osler. We're going to pass St. Bernadette's Elementary. You're seeing the kind of paths in the neighborhoods on either side. Again, as our community is changing and developing, there's a real focus of having this as an educational zone with lots of families taking kids. This also means this is where we're getting a lot of traffic safety concerns as folks come to school. And this is a really busy pathway around school hours because we have 3 schools right beside each other that feed for the whole community. Again, just using this one arterial to get there. So yeah, thanks everyone, and I hope you're enjoying the beautiful, how beautiful this part of our city is. I mean, we live in a beautiful city overall, but I think it's really easy to appreciate it here, surrounded by so many large trees, so many wonderful natural areas. And something to think about is as a result of that, folks in Ward 13 generally live a decade longer than areas in folks in other parts of our city. There's a difference in life expectancy because of the natural infrastructure we have. I know I keep harping on natural infrastructure, but it's so much about what makes this community so wonderful. I mean, we're seeing how plazas are shaping up in Ward 13. We're beginning to get some of that development here. We're beginning to get some of that intensification. We see a lot of townhouses on either side of Governor's. A lot's gone right, but we're also still figuring out how to navigate, again, as Craig was saying, the traffic that comes with this increased development in such a geographically constrained area as well. We are still in Ward 13 for a minute. I guess we have St. Joseph's Villa coming up as well. We have a lot of senior care facilities as folks are aging and are maybe transitioning out of living at home and are transitioning into a long-term care facility or other types of supported living. There is a lot of almost placement of those right beside each other, so you'll have a lot of purpose-built senior community, orientation of senior services or health services nearby, and that's part of the industry that's in Ward 13, and our population reflects that. I think downtown Hamilton, Ward 12, and Ward 13 are the 3 places where the most seniors are in our whole community, many of them being in Ward 13 as well, just right here in our kind of downtown suburban edge. Oh, it's not that I'm running out of things to say, but I am running out of speed to talk. So we're on our way to Ward 12. I'd ask folks as we drive up Old Lancaster Road to think about the traffic safety concerns. That's something that we really heard from residents, and something we'd hope to move on quite quickly because of just the sheer number of concerns. I'll share as we go on Old Lancaster Road. I hope folks can stay vigilant. We canvassed on the area about 5 times. We witnessed 4 accidents. Just like almost every single time that we knocked on doors or were passing in the area throughout the campaign, we witnessed an accident or near collision. It is an unsafe area, and that's something residents are saying quite clearly. So something to keep in mind as we are about to take those turns.
Yeah, and I'll add more on that as we're going up Old Dundas and Lancaster Road. But just to jump on what Alex was saying there about the mature trees in this area, and when we think about our urban forest strategy and our target for tree canopy coverage stated at 30%, that is a number for the entire city. And clearly there's an uneven distribution of that today. And as we think about, the eastern parts of the city and the lower part of the city where there aren't a lot of trees, that math really, looking at averages, doesn't help us really, I think, make right decisions and good decisions and set strengthening of targets. Because this area, to your right or to your left, is pulling that average up. So I think that's something we need to keep in mind. It's not just the average, it's the distribution and the median coverage and what that looks like in different parts of the city. So for further discussion. So we are now heading into Ward 12 on Old Lancaster Road. This is a busy area, as Alex was touching on. It's there's two ways to get into Dundas and Ancaster. This is one of them. It's the more scenic route. The other one is Wilson Street, which is recently done with bike lanes, which actually is great now, but there's a lot of traffic on here as well. So we are just crossing the Hamilton-Brantford rail trail right now. There is a crossing there for pedestrians. I'm not sure how recent that is, but it's fairly recent where actually it's flashing lights. And just up ahead here is one of the oddest intersections, I think, in all of Hamilton. It's about a couple hundred meters up. But what you'll notice here, when we get to it, is it's kind of a split. It's a fork. So we can go right or you can go left. And there's a stop sign for two of the directions. It's coming the other way, there is no stop sign. And I'm interested to see how in this bus we are going to navigate the intersection.
When Craig spoke about the pedestrian crossing there, I think it's really, really valuable to have that. And a lesson we can all think about as we're thinking about pedestrian infrastructure in our wards is just how do drivers respond and what is the impact. And so that crossing has been really helpful in getting the pedestrians across the road, but it's also led to an extreme number of near collisions and rear endings at the light as the first car starts stopping because the lights are flashing, but the car behind them doesn't have time to stop and so ends up rear-ending them, and potentially that can even move the whole collision into the crossing. So that's a common intersection, and I'll pass it to Craig as we're leaving Ward 13 to talk about this weird intersection.
Yeah, so here we are. If you head straight ahead, there is a kind of cul-de-sac residential area, part of Dundas. And we are going to turn left, which takes us into a valley, and then up into Ancaster. So you can already see the confusion here. So cars coming at us do not have a stop sign, but they can turn left, as this white car is right now. So that's a great example to see live. And as we head down here, very narrow, very scenic. I know that a lot of drivers, maybe young drivers, like to come down to this area, as I've heard from residents, because of the turns and the elevation, and there's a lot of speeding. So this is part of the danger that we're talking about here. You see there's no room, there's no shoulder whatsoever. Guardrail on our left here and a hill going up pretty steep on our right. There is no room for pedestrians and there's very little room for cars. So there is huge concern from residents here about speeding. You can see just we're passing here, it is a 40-kilometer-an-hour area. From personal experience, and driving 40 kilometers here, I will see cars back up behind me because they are generally going faster than 40. And, in my opinion here, this is a beautiful area. Take the extra minute or two to enjoy the scenery and be safe about it. But and keep your eyes on the road, exactly. So this is a conservation area, or leads into conservation area. Just up on our right here is a parking lot that is along the Monarch Trail. It's part of the Hamilton Conservation Area. It is a great access point into the trails because you can go left across the road here into what might be the most secluded area, or at least it feels that way, on your way down to the rail trail and towards West Hamilton Dundas. And on the right, you access the main part of the Dundas Valley Conservation Area and where most of the 40 kilometer of trails are. You can see it's a very windy road, and you can see what the safety concerns would be. So there's the Monarch Trail parking lot, and the trails head out just to the right there about 2 o'clock. Up ahead, we are going to, in a couple minutes, be at Sherman Falls. So Hamilton, known as the City of Waterfalls. I've heard many different numbers, but over 100 most certainly. That is what many people think of us as. If you haven't been to Sherman Falls, you need to go. It runs very well, strong flow most of the year. I can't think of too many times where I haven't seen a very strong flow. And it is part of Ancaster Creek, so I mentioned before the documentary I did, but that is the water that's flowing from the headwaters of Ancaster Creek, where there is proposed development. I don't think I mentioned that. That's the whole reason for the work that I had done, is the proposed warehouse development on top of the Garner Marsh and headwaters of the Ancaster Creek. So that water comes down here. We're going to pass Ancaster Mill, and it flows through the waterfalls there and onto Sherman Falls, which is one of the most spectacular falls that we have here now. I will also mention in Ancaster, or Ward 12, there are 3 distinct areas. So we've talked a lot about rural parts of the ward and the farmland and the different kind of lifestyle there. We will be going through Old Ancaster, Ancaster Village, which is one of the 2 or 3 oldest settlements in Ontario. And it was started because of Ancaster Mill. So it was family that came here and saw the water, and of course at that time having locations by water for mills was critical. I'll just pause here. Sherman Falls, look to your right as we're making the turn there. You can see it's flowing very well today. And it actually is private property. So the Bruce Trail does go through there, but it is private property, as much of the Bruce Trail actually is. So if you are there, respect the area. So here is an area where we see much pedestrian activity, but again, there's no shoulder, no sidewalk whatsoever. It's very dangerous. And I've heard stories and I've seen near collisions here as well. We're taking it very slowly, which is a great idea. It is a blind corner, and you'll see people with strollers, young children, there's couples walking. We have not, to my knowledge, had any serious accidents or fatalities yet, but this is a sort of topic where we want to get on top of it before we have those kind of things and then act. So, yeah. Residents in this area, when I spoke to them, that was the #1 topic, is we need to control the speed of traffic here and deal with pedestrians who are taking their life into their hands. Okay, I believe we're going straight here. Yeah? Okay, so we're going straight, which is great. If you go left, you go up to Wilson Street, which is the other main access point from Dundas up into Ancaster. This is the more scenic route. The development here on the left and the right is very recent. A number of houses have been put in here, and you notice the orientation of the garages. So most of them are turned kind of sideways because they are very narrow lots. But here we are, just up ahead is Ancaster Mill. And I'm sure many have been here over the years. It used to be called the Old Mill, now it's Ancaster Mill. Also up on the right is access to the trail system. You'll notice if you come here that the sign says parking available to the public until 11 a.m. After that, it is actually Ancaster Mill property, but they do allow access for public parking. On the left here is a very recent addition. It is an indoor chapel for weddings, which is right beside the creek. If you look out the left window, that is Ancaster Creek running beside us. And it's here, it comes under Wilson Street. So another example that was referred to earlier, Alex mentioned, where we've kind of just built our infrastructure over top of our waterways. So if you're driving up Wilson here, or turning left from Rousseau, you don't even have a sense that there's a creek there, unless you go get out and you're on foot. And on the left here is where the Brandon House used to be. I'm sure you've heard about that. In the first days of the pandemic, it was knocked down. And there is a proposal now, so right there is where the house used to be. It was a historic house, one of the first ones here in the area. This whole area, up until this gray house here, there is a proposal for of 7 to 8 stories, whereas the secondary plan would say 3 are allowed, but because of the OLT and how those decisions go, it's very likely that that will happen. And here's another area where there is another development proposed. It's a Philip Morrow house, another 7 to 8 story proposal going in there. So a lot of change potentially coming to Ancaster, but we're here in the middle of the village. So this is the part that people love about Ancaster. You have a large plaza on the left here. There's a lot of small businesses that bring vitality and vibrancy to Ancaster. And the goal, as we are seeing the change in the development happen, is to maintain that vibrancy, keep it a walkable community where people want to come spend money. And where we just also passed the Ancaster Memorial Arts Center. So that opened, it was supposed to open last year. It opened just in August. It is a fantastic facility with Peller Hall, a 470-seat theater, which is amazing to have here. Ancaster Theater, which was previously out of Ancaster Secondary School, has moved here. Now they have a professional state-of-the-art theater. And there's also a smaller Vertman studio for smaller events. But it's so important to have something like that for the arts and for the community to be an anchor for business and activity in the area. Ancaster Library and Municipal Center, so that is where the regional office is for Ward 12. And we're coming up to another major intersection here in Halson Street and Wilson, which we are on. Now, one of the biggest issues here is traffic. There's 2 ways to get through Ancaster. We're on one of them, and the other one is Gardner Road, which I don't think we're going to be on later. But whenever there is a problem or an accident, a traffic jam on the 403, all the traffic overflows into the street we're on now. So we came up there with any impediments. It was very quick. But during a rush hour time, whether it's in the morning or the evening, this area is very, very heavy traffic and adds many multiples to transit time and travel time. I said transit there, maybe a slip of the tongue, but that is something that is another topic here. The transit out this way is infrequent and not on Sundays. So it's something that a lot of people have talked about is they need to have a second car in their family to get to, if a couple has 2 jobs, because transit is not an option. I talked to people who lived here, worked at McMaster, and they had to afford the expense of a second car just because they could not get reliably to work on time. So it is a real issue that people are talking about. We're about to come into one of the major retail areas in Ancaster. The largest one is on Golf Links Drive in the newer part of Ancaster, which we're not going to see. But here is an older area, a plaza, on both sides with very small business retail and 2 grocery stores. So contrasting what we heard about in Ward 13, where there is only 1 small grocery store, that is not the same problem with Ancaster. We have a Fortino's on the left, the Food Basics on the right, and there are more in the Meadowlands. But I was talking about the 3 areas of Ancaster. So we talked about rural, we're in the old part of Ancaster, and across the 403, which is really the divider, is the Meadowlands. So I'm sure everyone's heard of the Meadowlands. That's where my family lives. And there's a very distinct identity if you live in rural, if you live in old Ancaster, or you live in the Meadowlands. And that's just the way it is. People feel tied to their neighborhood. And the demographic is also very different if you look at the stats. A lot of people living in this part of Ancaster are a lot older, have lived here a much longer time, and there's less immigration happening here. If you go to the Meadowlands and knock on the number of doors that I did, you will see firsthand that is where immigrants are coming. And there's a lot more renting happening in that part of Ancaster, and there's many languages spoken. So language, talking to people at the door was a bit of a barrier. But that's where we're seeing immigrants happening. So, the vision of maybe Ancaster as a white place is not really a reality. It is changing quite significantly. More development happening here on the right. So Ancaster really is changing. Another one here. residential, large developments happening and having an impact on the character. And I would say that is one topic of the heritage, the character of Ancaster that people really hang on to. And we need to find a way that development that does happen respects that heritage and fits in, even though there is change happening. We know the change is happening, but the overwhelming voice of people here is we need it to fit in with the community. And as you can see, the residential areas on both sides of the road here, this was built at a time where you did not have cookie cutter houses, although you do see some of the infill happening. Some of these houses here on the right would have been knockdowns and rebuilds. And you've heard the term monster homes. That is another issue where people will come in, buy property, knock down a post-war home and build something that is 2-3 times larger and changes the character of the neighborhood significantly. And here's one of the fire stations in Ancaster. Yes, and so we are going through a traffic circle. There are, I believe, 19 traffic circles in Ancaster, and if I have my facts correct, that is the vast majority of all the traffic circles that exist in Hamilton. So if you live in Ancaster, you need to learn how to drive through a traffic circle, and from what I hear, many people believe no one else knows how to drive through a traffic circle. So, yeah. It is a bit different than our typical intersections. So we are now heading into recently expanded parts of Ancaster. We're going to come up into the Walmart and the Canadian Tire, another major power center. And what you're going to see is pedestrian access to this area kind of stops just up ahead. And there's been lots of talk about that. For a lot of young people will work up in this area. They'll live in the area where there's the highway access, the 403, and getting up here to work cannot be done safely on foot or on bike. So you can see now the sidewalk that was there before the 403 has disappeared, and now we have a soft shoulder. Oh no, there is a sidewalk on the right still, but getting across over to the left has been a challenge. So accessibility beyond just your car is a challenge, and it is on people's minds and how we build livable, walkable cities. So another roundabout, less than a kilometer later. On the right here, just at the corner of Shaver Road and Wilson, is another proposed development for a storage area right here on the right. You can see the real estate sign. So where this silo is. So there's been an application here for a large self-storage site. And on the left here is the power center. There's the Walmart and the Canadian Tire and many other things. And we are quickly approaching a third roundabout. So you probably already passed your annual quota of roundabouts if you don't live in this area. And on the right is another more recent power center. So you have hardware, you have other retail in here. There is another grocery store. Longo's is just up ahead on the right. And if we were to continue on this road, it would take us through to Brantford. So this would be one way to get to Brantford prior to the 403 extension that happened in the, I'm not sure, 2 decades ago. But we are coming up, we will be turning at the Ancaster Fairgrounds. So the Ancaster Fairgrounds is home of the Ancaster Fair, which is one of the biggest draws in the area and a huge event for the rural community. The Ancaster Fair was actually one of the previous locations. Well, the first location was in 1850, so it's been here a very, very long time. In 1949, it was relocated to where the Meadowlands is now along Garner Road, and I think we're going to be going past that area in a little bit. But in 2009, it moved to the area now. It's a much larger facility, it's a modern facility, and has allowed the fair to grow and be. And throughout the year, there are many other events that are held here. So just like the Ancaster Memorial Arts Center, having a facility like this for the community has been huge. On the left here, you can see more development. This is the Ancaster Business Park. It is, as Councilor McMeekin said, large percentages of jobs are in industrial or in business parks, and this is the center for that in Ancaster. One of the challenges here is, again, transportation, and I'll bring the conversation back to transit. So the BLAST network would have one of the terminus lines, one of the lines across the mountain and here, and that would be huge because there's a challenge with getting labor to this area now if you don't own a car. And if there is rapid transit coming around and stopping here in a major employment area, that's going to be good for all of us. So there, if you look out the front left, that is the Ancaster Fairgrounds. It looks quiet here today, but if you were here in September, there was the fair, you have all the rides and the events. Got craft shows. Yeah, there's many events here throughout the year. So, pardon me? Okay, apparently Stag and Does are to be held here, so if you know anyone in the market for that. So I'll just let you have a look at it as we drive by.
Hindu community had a big event here.
Oh, the Hindu community had an event here, so
Huge.
yeah, it's used by all parts of the community, so it's a fabulous asset. There's the main building, Merritt Hall. Any sort of indoor expos, excuse me, would be held in there. And coming up on the right, big empty area, that's where all the parking happens. And that fills up very quickly. Again, people need to get here by car because transit is not feasible. So we are now on Trinity Road. And to the left there, that is a new access into the business park, which Councillor Ferguson was a big part of making that happen, which helps just make sure traffic. I believe we're turning down Book Road, and we are going to be driving through, and we're in the Greenbelt, and we will be driving past through one of the areas that has been proposed in Bill 23 to be removed from the Greenbelt for residential development. So we're turning down to Book Road. So the Book Road is named after one of the multi-generational farming families, the Book family here. And up until very recently, they owned and farmed the property on Gardner Road, which will be off to our left. And for many generations, they've been now forced out. The land that was purchased has been sold as part of the AEGD, the Airport Employment Growth District. And that is what is leaving the Gardner Marsh and headwaters of the Ancaster Creek exposed to development. Everything here is farmland, although we will pass a golf course, which I'm not sure if Councillor McMeekin has been there in the past. Quite probably. But most of this is farmland and rural residents and Greenbelt area. So I guess the point of driving through here is to see if there is residential development opening up here and it will drastically change the landscape. It will take up a lot of farmland and it is going to require more car-dependent transportation because I mentioned that transit within urban Ancaster is not where it needs to be. There's certainly no transit out here, so it's just going to add more traffic to our roads And right now you can see, this is 2-lane, one each way, rural road. And so when we come up to Shaver Road here, we'll be crossing over into the Greenbelt Cut area. So then here it is. Turning left to Shaver Road. So now we're in an area close to our left and further out to our right that would be removed from the Greenbelt for residential development. Just have a look at the change in green. There is a farm in this area, Lindley Farm, and a family farm being here raw in the fall season throughout the year. And that would be one of the areas that would be turned over to development. We think about local food source, food security, it's a real public example of what would be lost. Yep, people are number 10, Robert. So again, this is a large swath of land, part of the Greenbelt today, proposed to be removed for homes, which, yes, we need homes, we need to build them with the plan that the city already has within the urban boundary, so that we don't lose all of this.
Is this land owned by developers then?
There, I know that Gabrielle and another had done an article on the ownership of the area, so I refer you to read that. I do not know all the owners. There were a wide variety of ownership in this area. You can find that in stuff there. This is the intersection with Fiddler's Green. If you turn right, you would head towards Carluke. There's Cranston Farm, famous for corn. There's Carluke Orchards for apples. And this area to the head here would not be part of the Greenbelt Cut. It would be Fiddler's Green and back towards Shaver, where we came from, and off to our right as well. So it's not bounded entirely by roads. Off to the right is also Butter Road. I mentioned Book Road. Butter Road is also a multi-generational family. They still farm land. Most of it is leased. I got to know the Butter family through the last several months, and they have a road named after them. Just up ahead is the intersection to Highway 6. If you were to turn right east, we would be going to Hamilton International Airport. You're not going to be able to see it clearly, but just to the left here are the ruins of the original Book family homestead. I don't think you can see anything from the road, even though the leaves are down. But that entrance we just passed right there would have been the access to the Book family homestead when they started farming here many, many moons ago.
Big words.
another unique feature, and I'm not sure how many of these exist in Hamilton or more broadly in Ontario. But on our right, in a moment, there's a pet cemetery. Here it is on the right, just now.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
New day.
I talked earlier about the multiculturalism and the diversity of immigrants into the area. Representing that, just off the upcoming intersection is a new mosque. So right now, it is just a portable building. There is an application to build a permanent building. If we're not turning right, but if we were, it would just be off here at about 2 o'clock. There's some land that was purchased and it's kind of set back from the road here, but another example of just how multiculturalism is becoming a bigger part of our city. Really hoping I can stop talking.
Almost.
I can't. Please.
So one of the things that we've been talking a lot, I'm jumping back in as we're in the headwaters area of the Garner Marsh to give Craig a chance to drink some water. But myself and Craig engaged with a bunch of residents in a group called Save Our Streams Hamilton prior to the election. And it really showed the power of thinking about our waterways and our natural system of connecting folks across ward boundaries. The headwaters of the Ancaster Creek are up here in Craig's ward, and the downstream impact is down in Ward 13. A lot of the coalition, a lot of the engagement from Save Our Stream residents members and folks who are coming out to webinars and getting engaged in campaigns came from folks who live both up and down streams, who saw the connection between our communities. Hopefully a lesson we can all think about as we go to the east end. We'll also see a lot of up and downstream connections between communities. As we do the mountain, we'll see some of the up and downstream connections between Ward 1 and Ward 14 with Chinook Creek. So really, even though the escarpment maybe is seen as dividing our communities, it's also, you know, a real representation of how connected the up and down are. And it's been really a pleasure working with Craig kind of on those issues now. And something to think about is how residents can really get engaged and see the connections quite easily, and want to do that work and want to do that kind of seeing the whole system and how our community is a part of something going on in another community too.
Just one comment before I hand it off to Mark here. The area we just passed is the headwaters of Ancaster Creek. It's also the headwaters of the Welland River and 20 Mile Creek. So it's not just watersheds. Watersheds are not political boundaries. The airport becoming growth district land. Something to consider when we're talking about building and expanding. So I'll pass it over to you.
Good job. Thank you. Yay. On your right-hand side, series of houses built back in the 50s and 60s. Just behind them was what used to be a golf course, Lancaster Golf Course. To the right of that is a development area on 20 Road West. Currently it's rural and industrial part of the airport employment growth lands, and there's a current proposal in front of the tribunal, I believe, to turn that into residential and 2,500 homes. And if you look down the road there, you can see it's 2 lanes. So there's a big push from there's retirement communities on the left-hand side going all the way down to Upper James there. There's a big push to let's build the infrastructure and make that road walkable for our seniors that live down there, and with sidewalks and streetlights and transit come down there before we build those 2,500 homes. We will fight that development, but basically it's beyond us right now. Again, this is new surveys in behind this area. It's basically called Grassy Plains Copperfield surveys. They're relatively new, I'd say, built mostly in the last 10 to 15 years. And as we come up, this is the hydro corridor, so I'll be leaving my area and handing it over to my good friend, Mike.
Sorry, Councillor, to take the spotlight away from you, but I want to, as we get into Ward 14, one of the biggest differences 15 is that if you blink, you may be out of 14 and into Ward 8. As many know, Ward 14 was created in 2018 when we distributed the boundaries from Ward 8. One thing to take note of, you'll see we just passed the Hamilton District Christian High School. It's not in Ward 14, but I'll explain a safety concern. So many kids obviously go to this high school. Many kids look for places to eat, lunch. Some like to bring lunch, some don't. So we are on Rymal Road. These students would walk on this road that you're looking at right now with, as you can see, no sidewalks. And they'll continue walking. A sidewalk starts here and a sidewalk starts on the other side. So they'll use this area to get to a plaza here on the left-hand side, which is the corner of Upper Paradise Road and Rymal. What you'll notice on the right-hand side is we've now kind of lost, I mean, you can call them a sidewalks, but not really. The right-hand side doesn't have a sidewalk. There's some residents here with some mobility issues, so obviously safety here is a major concern. This intersection from 7:45 to about 8:15 is extremely congested because up the street here on Upper Paradise on your right-hand side is St. Thomas More High School, which I am an alumni of. I know that surprises some people, but yes, I went to St. Thomas More.
What, did you graduate?
Yes, so we'll leave that part up. Anyways, a lot of traffic concern here, safety concern, pedestrians and cyclists. We do have a development proposed here on the right, waiting to get an updated report from staff on exactly what is being proposed. Again, if you do blink over the next few seconds, you will be out of Ward 14 and heading into Ward 8. Rymal here, I know there's some discussion through the Complete Streets report. Obviously, we do have sidewalks, cyclists and bike lanes are not present, but I know there's some discussions that have happened. On the right-hand side here, before the Hydro Corridor, there was a big development that happened a few years back. And just before we head out of Ward 14 into Ward 8, on the right-hand side, you'll see a development that was done a few years ago. This is a rental development. The one thing that I've learned about is there's many units in here that are more than one bedroom. And what that allows people to do is not have to move out if two families are joining, if a single mother or single father would have more than one child, they'd be able to stay in here rather than having to be moved out because they're all mostly single bedroom units, so that's good for that. There's some two, I believe there might even be some 3-bedroom. And on the left hand side before we exit, we have Deerview Crossing, which is a retirement residence that is operated by Chartwell. I guess in Ward 8, but pretty close to Ward 14, is also St. Elizabeth Village on your right-hand side. And then I'm going to pass it over to Ward 11.
We're just passing Garth Road right now, and Garth Road, there's a proposal to extend it. It ends at 20 Road, and there's a proposal to extend it to Dickinson Road to service new industrial growth in those areas. And we're in Ward 8 now. Okay, so Ward 8.
He's not here.
Yeah, I am not going to speak for the councillor of Ward 8 because I don't want to talk on his behalf, but I will pass it over to the mayor.
I just wanted to see if anybody got any comments from the councillor from Ward 8 that he wanted to highlight anything in his ward particularly.
We weren't aware he was going to be here.
Okay, so Ward 8 Councillor Danko wasn't able to be here. We were going through his ward for a few minutes, and then the other councillor, just so people know, who wasn't able to make it is Councillor Clark, but apparently he has provided a few things for people to share, for other people to share on his behalf.
One thing that I can share that Councillor Danko and I share is coming up to Upper James. That's there's a new, I guess it's the Transit A line, and it runs from the airport all the way down on a regular basis down to the Bayfront. So it hooks up to the GO train, hooks up to the other bus services down there. So this is an excellent move, I think, by the city of Hamilton, because we can develop infrastructure along here. We can do intensification, and it's supported by this now, so that you can basically live in Mount Hope and work in downtown Hamilton and never need a car. So those bus routes, I think the lines are increased to, like, it leaves the airport every 10 minutes or so. So those are good things. And as we move along Upper James here, you'll see that's a busy corridor. And one of the things as we move into my ward as we cross the highway coming up are the fact that, as you can see right here, we don't have a center turning lane for some of these businesses and institutions that we have to turn into. So that makes it difficulty. You know, there's traffic stopping on the left to make a left-hand turn. There's frequent accidents here. There's been many fatalities along this road, and we're looking for, one of the things that many people shared with me in this area as we cross into Ward 11 right now, is we're looking for road enhancements along here. So as you can see, if you wanted to turn into the left-hand side, on the left we've got a Kia dealership coming up. There's no turning lanes. And on your right-hand side is a new development. They've just recently cleared this land, and there was a stop order put out by Brenda for them. That was all treed and shrubbery. It's just been cleared. There's a new development that the citizens in the retirement communities didn't even know about. Basically, it's going to be townhouses by them, and as we get closer to Upper James here, they're going to be higher build forms between 6 and 10 stories high. As we cross, this is 20 Road. This is 20 Road West, and this is the other side of the developments that I was telling you about earlier, where they're proposing to put 2,500 homes just on the south side of 20 up here.
Is that urban boundary expansion?
Yes, it is. Well, it's actually, yes, it was, because the areas that they're proposing used to be rural and industrial. And so we're looking again. I don't know what the status of that is. There's a proposal, this hydro corridor, to be someday to become a multi-use trail. And there is also, if you look at this master plan for the cycling network, there's also supposed to be a multi-trail, use trail down here somewhere. I don't know where we're going to put it. But as you can, they're going to have to do some enhancements. Sharples, which has been a staple in our community for many years, is closing at the end of, thanks buddy, at the end. This is our bus terminal to the right. So all the buses at night, basically, most of the buses from the city come here and they receive service. This is a big hub. In Clanbrook here, on this side of the town, you can, or the township, I guess you can call it, or the ward, you can actually call for a Transcab. They'll bring you here, which will brings you to a bus. The unfortunate part is sometimes Transcab has not been very quick in their service for Glanbrook. So you have some people that are dropped off here by a bus and waiting up to an hour or an hour and a half for a cab to show up to take them to a place where they reside over on Whitechurch. So there are some issues with the courier that runs that. Again, as we're coming up here, you can see this is the site of, this is Dickinson Road coming up here. And we've got Amazon to our right. It's quite an amazing story. One that I'd share with you if I could get my phone open. But in 2018, this was just a field. 20 years ago, this was a golf course. Maybe 30 years ago, it was a golf course. Anyways, Amazon in 2018, this started with a cold call to our business investment department out of nowhere. And the client basically was looking for 50 to 100 acres. And through basic excellent coordination with city manager, our city business department, all the staff at city, they have the ability to store up to 28 million pieces of merchandise and units, I guess is what they call it. As we're coming up to as we're passing Amazon now, we're coming up to the hub of Mount Hope. So, you'll see on the left-hand side of Mount Hope, here is a plane that Brenda is quite proud of putting up, and that's actually a training plane, and it's very symbolic.
There's the airport. It's on the right.
Yeah, we're not going to the airport? Okay, I thought we were going to the airport. Okay, so, anyways, we're just taking, this is the Mount Hope bypass, and as you can see, as we're coming up to, I think, if you look on the right-hand side, there is a baseball diamond where I played many a year in a Glenbrook Slow Pitch League. As you can see, this track that's raised around here, that was actually, see the bridge right there? They had to do that. After they built the track, they realized they dammed in all the water. They had to build the bridge afterwards so the water could flow away. So that's a classic case of a situation that we need to rectify. So
We're not, unfortunately.
okay, gotcha. Okay, so this is a big bugaboo right now with Glenbrook, is this development here where we've got this convenience store. So the cars come into Tim Hortons there, they back up all the way down Airport Road, and then people are trying to come out and come into this highway here, do a U-turn. So again, new developments here. As you look at the built forms, not very similar to, they're not similar to what's in the area. So it was resisted by the community who had single unit dwellings, and those are more townhouse builds. They're looking at possibly this intersection right here as being another outlet for Mount Hope. We're raising that as an issue because all this community here, they basically have to drive through town to get out, and there is an exit on White Church Road over here to the right. Again, this is a new survey probably in the last 15 to 20 years that's developed. We are now heading down a road called White Church by the people of Mount Hope. Later it will turn into Bimbrook Road for all those on the other side of the township. And as we turn left here, just take a look around. You can see where Mount Hope ends. This over here is the proposed addition to the Greenbelt on our left, and I guess
Removal.
sorry, addition to the urban boundary. A removal from the Greenbelt. Like when I look at that, it makes no sense. So again, there's no infrastructure to support it. There is, as you look ahead there, when we say down the road there, see those street lights over there? That's where the Upper James and Highway bypass meet. So there is a proposal on the master, the master truck route and the master transportation route for eventually someday that to extend through those fields along that hydro corridor, straight down this road, run parallel, turn left just before you get to basically what I call Bimbrook Road, run down Trinity Church Road and join up with the Upper Red Hill Creek Expressway. That would take a lot of truck traffic off our roads. This road here is proposed to be a truck route. A lot of people are having issues with that, and all the roads that run parallel to this are much thinner. The shoulders are much thinner. We have a lot of issues. People in Glenbrook feel safer walking downtown, riding a rickshaw downtown, than they do walking on their own road. This one is not a walkable shoulder here. Many of our other rural roads that run east and west do not have that. Again, this is Greenbelt area that's coming up, and that Greenbelt is being proposed to be removed. It would end at Ferris Road, which is our next intersection, and it's a T intersection. We don't want that to happen, no. So I think when I sit down with our provincial counterparts, I'll be able to, argue effectively why this should be kept in the green space. On the left-hand side is another part. I believe that in the maps, it's hard to tell, but it does kind of swerve around here. And this also on the left-hand side looks like it's part of development. And it doesn't really make too much sense. One of the sad parts about this area was just to our left over here is the pond where those two children drowned a couple weeks ago with the ATV accident. So it's it's quite an effect on a lot of the residents around here. Many of the guys I play hockey with, live on these roads, and the family, my neighbors, and other people that I meet, their children go to school with those children. So it's really affected, and it's just basically on the other side is the pond, and we won't go any more into that. This is something I'm very proud of. We've got the rail trail, and I would love to get, I guess, bike paths hooked up on these rural roads so that they could hook up to that bike path. That bike path leads all the way down the mountain, down to Wentworth Street. It goes past the quad pads and all those areas. And it would be a good thing if we could really finish out that cycling network. Am I allowed to say that? Yeah. Okay, there we go. Okay, thank you. Other areas of concern along we would call Lake Niapenco, Niagara Conservation Peninsula area. So Lake Niapenco, basically it's on the Pembroke Conservation Grounds. It has 944 hectares. About 200 hectares of that is water that we call the conservation area. Lake Niapenco. You can do any number of things out there. Canoeing. You can't take your motorboat out there, but you can canoe. You can fish off the shores. Just don't eat those fish because we know the PFOs from the airport have basically leached into there, gone across the grounds. The one good thing about that is that none of those chemicals actually, they float on top of the clay-based soil that we have out here in God's country. And they end up in the rivers as opposed to just going down into people's wells. Most of the people along here would be on well water. It's always a big issue, so we have lots of people coming into our township office to get their well water tested, probably quarterly. That school back there that we just passed was Bellstone School. That's the school I went to for kindergarten in grade 6. Yay for me. These were all my friends along here. Again, as you can see, we ride our bikes up here. One of the best things about living in Glanbrook when I was a kid is we had lots and lots of sod fields, and that is like it's basically a football field with no end zones. You could run and run for miles and miles. Farms and chicken farms. Any number of there's a gentleman up here on the right hand side. His farm has we are reaching some area. This is Tisdale, and if you drive straight down Tisdale, you could run into another there's campgrounds down the borderline. Back up Nebo Road where Bellstone School was. At the end of Nebo Road is Camp Marydale, which is a great campground that services lots of different venues for the school boards and stuff there. And we're coming to the S-Bend, and this basically, some people want to make this, I love this intersection, it's the first one in mine. Some people want to make this a roundabout, and I just don't see the practicality of that, but, we'll see what happens. It's just a unique kind of corner. Coming up to Glanbrook Arena, which will be on the left hand side. But this is that's Trinity Church Road. That's a thoroughway for anybody from Pembroke trying to get to the Red Hill Creek Expressway. It is basically so busy to the point where if people try to cross the road to get their mail, sometimes having to wait 3 or 4 minutes to get back across the road to get back to their driveway. So again, that's just an area, and we'll talk more about Pembroke later. On the left-hand side, if you can read, you can say you can see that's Glanbrook Arena, and that's where I spent the better part of my childhood growing up. I started playing hockey there at the age of 10. Before that, we had to drive to Caledonia to go to a rink because that's where Mount Hope kids played out of. This was put together by a community. The land was donated by the farmers. They built it. Once they built it, they realized it was on the low ground. It was flooding out all the time, so the farmers all showed up with their tractors and so forth, dug it all out again, put weeping tile down. On the right-hand side is my constituent's office there. That's where we have lots of great things going on there. We house the Glanbrook Homes Community Support there, which is kind of like a united way for Glenbrook. That's the best way I can describe it. It's just they serve all kinds of things. They organize senior nights, they euchre tournaments, they do food services, frozen food and hot food deliveries to our seniors. Lots of volunteer action. I walked in there yesterday and it looked like probably 30 people in the council chambers there, and they're having a meeting. It was just wonderful to see the volunteerism and the community spirit that exists in Glenbrook. This is where we're going to have lunch. I'm going to turn it over to the mayor maybe. And this is...
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Great morning so far. This is our stop for our lunch break, so we're going to recess the council, or the committee meeting rather. So can I get a motion for the recess? Councillor Maureen Wilson moved. Councillor Beatty seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Lunchtime. Thank you all.